And Ms. Campione was a woman who suffered terrible, tragic domestic abuse for a very long time.
On the steps outside a Barrie, Ontario courtroom, Elaine Campione's lawyer said her client was abused by her husband and struggled with mental illness, but the jury didn't buy it and convicted Campione of killing her 2 daughters in 2006. 3-year-old Serena and 19-month-old Sophia were drowned in a bathtub in the family's apartment. She was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. So to break down this case, we are joined in studio by David Perry. He's a former child homicide investigator with the Toronto Police Service Homicide Squad. Good to talk to you.
Good morning.
I mean, it's always shocking. Child murder is, always shocking, particularly when it's the parent who's responsible. How rare is that?
Well, unfortunately, it's not very rare. In this country, about 10% of our homicides every year are committed against children, and the majority of those are at the hands of their own parents.
Based on the evidence you heard in this particular case, what happened? What do you think was the motive?
Well, I think revenge was the motive,
yeah.
And revenge is a motive for a lot of homicides. But fortunately, it's quite rare when it comes to children. But clearly, everything I saw here is that this was a mother who was intent on, enacting her revenge on her husband through the most brutal way, which was to murder their children.
Murdered the children and then appeared on videotape before the camera.
Right. A lot of planning, a lot of deliberation.
So she killed the children, and then 45 minutes later appears on a videotape saying, "Are you happy now?"
Yes. Yeah, I can't imagine what the father is going through and what he's going to have to go through for the rest of his life. But that's the ultimate act of revenge.
So is this a case? As I understand it, there were 2 psychiatrists who testified, and one said she had delusions,
right,
and was aware of it, and the other one said she had delusions and wasn't aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know? Can you explain that for me?
Well, in law, what it comes down to is were they criminally non-responsible for their actions?
Yeah. And
clearly, in this case, the jury didn't buy the fact that she was so mentally ill that she didn't understand or comprehend the nature of the acts. And from what I saw, I would agree with that. I mean, she did a lot of planning. There was a lot of thought that went into this, dressing the children after the murders,
yeah,
and then going ahead and creating this horrible video to leave for her husband. And, I clearly she knew what she was doing.
The jurors asked for a definition of morally wrong,
mm-hmm,
to decide whether or not, insanity was defined by law. What is the legal definition of insanity?
Well, I can't go there exactly, but I can tell you that, I've dealt with cases, a lot of child death investigations, where in a rare circumstances you find that somebody's criminally non-responsible because they are so mentally ill that they don't understand the gravity of the offense. And those are pretty rare. I had one case where a woman strangled her infant son right in front of the grandmother. And I can tell you that it was horrible, like all child death investigations are. But as soon as I met that woman, I clearly knew that she was suffering major mental health issues. I didn't have to be a psychiatrist to recognize that. But in all of the other cases that I've worked on, clearly there was a thought process involved. I've dealt with cases where people have abused their children to the point where death was the result. And in some cases, they actually avoided taking their children to the hospital so that they wouldn't be caught. They could have saved the child's life, but rather than be caught, they sort of rolled the dice, if you will, on the child's life and hoped that the child would survive, and they didn't. So, unfortunately, it's a sad situation that occurs way too often in Canada.
The fact that she made a video confession.
Chilling.
And obviously she didn't even care that she was confessing and obviously would be caught.
Right.
So long as she hurt him.
I think the hurt and the revenge was the first motive, and from some of the reports I heard, it seemed that she was intent on committing suicide, and she didn't, mm-hmm, which also, in my mind, goes to speak to her, her state of mind at the time, that she didn't take her own life. And, it's a tragic case all around. It's just horrible.
David Perry, thank you.
My pleasure.
Good to